Hi, and welcome to the very first video in my series on how to speak like a native speaker. I'm Adam, and I've been teaching IELTS preparation since 2001. And one thing that I've noticed is that there are particular ways that non-native speakers pronounce things that is different from how native speakers pronounce them. So in these videos, I'm going to take you through all of those little things that make the difference between the way you probably pronounce English and the way native speakers like myself do. So I'll be teaching you the things that your English teacher probably never taught you. The way we pronounce English is actually quite different from what the dictionary will tell you. And this is not just for one form of English. I'm not just going to teach you Australian English or American English or British English. I'm Australian, but the rules that you're going to learn here are things that people do in every form of English. Americans do it, British people do it, Australians do it, New Zealanders do it, South Africans do it, everybody does it. So these are universal rules. If you apply this, you'll be able to speak whatever form of English you're wanting to use much more naturally. If there are differences between, say, American English or British English, Australian English that are going to affect the things that we're learning, I'll let you know for sure. And the really good thing about this is that when you've learned these rules, your fluency will increase dramatically. But not only that, it'll also help you when you're listening. I'm sure that when you watch English-speaking movies or listen to music in English, that you find it really difficult to catch exactly what they're saying, that it just goes by so quickly. Well, when you understand these rules, you'll actually be able to catch a lot more of what you hear as well. So it's going to help your speaking, but it will also help your listening. So let's get down to lesson 1. All right, so for lesson 1, we're actually going to start with some of the basics. There may be some things that you already know and maybe some that you don't, but it's really important you stick with it for this lesson because everything in the videos that are coming after are going to be built on the foundation of what you learn in this lesson. Okay, so the very first thing we need to understand is syllables. So what is a syllable? A syllable is just a way that we break words up into something a bit like a beat. So Adam, 2 syllables. Australia, 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 4 syllables. So it's really important we can understand these syllables because the way that we pronounce some letters changes depending on their position in the syllable. And when we start combining words together into full sentences, things can change again. One problem that people have is they often pronounce words as they would if they were by themselves. But when we put them together, we actually change some things. So let's start by looking at the sounds that are different depending on their position in the syllable. So the letters B, D, G, K, P, and T are actually pronounced differently if they're at the beginning of a syllable than if they're at the end of a syllable. So for example, take a look at these 2 words, dog and God. They both have a D and they both have a G, but the sound of the D and the sound of the G are different in each word. So the first word, dog. So the D is quite strong, d, dog, dog. But the G on the end is actually quite weak. We don't say dog, no, it's just dog. So it's like we stop the sound coming out as soon as we start making it for the G. However, if you look at the word God, you can hear that G really clearly, yeah? God, God. The D at the end, however, you can't hear quite as clearly. It's much softer. Dog and God. Have a listen to the D in these words. Firstly, dog. Now, God. Can you even hear that D at the end? It's very, very subtle, very soft. So when we split words into syllables, or if it's a 1-syllable word like these 2, well, we actually will pronounce some letters differently depending on that position. So that's a really important basis. Generally, words at the beginning of a syllable are strong, words at the end of a syllable are soft. All right, So, why do we need to know that? Here's where it starts getting good. The way that we split words into syllables is probably different from what you think. So let's look at an example. Here we have two words, speak and English. So what most English learners do is they think, okay, speak is a one-syllable word, so that's my first syllable. English, that's two syllables, so it would be maybe speak English. That is actually not how native English speakers divide the syllables. We don't do it based on the words, we do it based on the sounds. So we would actually say spe for our first syllable. The next syllable will be king, and the next one will be glish. So it'd be spe kinglish instead of speak English. So here's where that theory about whether the consonant sound is strong or weak is actually going to affect things, because if speak is one syllable by itself, then that K will actually be soft. It'll be speak English, not speak English, just speak English. But native English speakers don't divide it that way. We'd say speak, and then that K is going to go across to the English, so it becomes speak Kinglish. Now, because the K is now at the beginning of the syllable, it's got a stronger sound, so it becomes speak Kinglish instead of speak English. So why do we do that? It actually makes it easier to pronounce things and to say words when they're together much more quickly. Because to say speak English, it's not smooth, it doesn't flow. But if we say speak English, it flows a lot more. So there's actually a rule for how we do this. How do we actually divide the syllables when we're speaking? Here's the rule. For every syllable, we want to try to make the first sound in the syllable a consonant. And that will be followed by a vowel. Always consonant, then vowel. Consonant, then vowel. So looking at speak English, you can see S is a consonant, P is another consonant, then we've got the vowel E. Next we've got K, another consonant. And then ing, the I from English, that's a vowel. So we want to connect the consonant with the vowel. We link them together. So this is what a lot of people call word linking. So speak, ki. Now we've got a vowel sound, Now we've got and then g, because the g, English. There's actually two consonant sounds there, and g. So we're gonna say speaking, and then glish will be our third syllable. Glish, G and L, the g and u are consonant sounds as well. So speaking glish is how we would divide it. So you'll see that we can actually say it much more quickly when we do that. Speak English, speak English. And it's actually clearer as well. So it makes you easier to understand when you do this, once you get a feel for it. So let's look at another example. This one, I'm an Australian. Now again, English learners would think I'm is one syllable, an is one syllable, and Now, actually we would say Australian. So it's kind of, we squeeze it all into one syllable in real life. And I'm here to teach you how we really pronounce things, not the textbook ways, the real life ways that'll make your English natural. So, but we're focused on the beginning. I'm, an. How are we going to divide that as native speakers? Well, the rule, consonant first, then vowel, connect a consonant with a vowel. Now there's nothing we can do there. There's no consonant before it, so we have to start with the vowel. So what do we have next? We have and a, consonant and vowel. So we're going to connect those two together. So it'll become I'm, not I'm and I'm. Now, the thing is, Australian also starts with a vowel sound. So we're going to take that N sound, the N sound from an, and connect it with the vowel at the beginning of Australian. So it becomes Nustralian. So the three words together becomes I'm an Australian. I'm an Australian. I'm an Australian. I'm an Australian. It's actually much easier to say I'm an Australian quickly, I'm an Australian, than to say I'm an Australian quickly, I'm an Australian. Hear that? Hear how it's not smooth? It's kind of jumpy and So, I'm an Australian or I'm an Australian. Second one's no good. But the second one is actually how most English learners would try to pronounce it. So once you understand this, your speaking will be much smoother and it can become more fluent once you get used to the rules so much that you don't need to think about them anymore. But that's just the beginning. But before we move on, let's look at one full sentence and see how we would do it with that. So here's our sentence. Word by word would be, I'm a big, ugly elephant. All right. So let's see how a native English speaker would actually pronounce it. So I, that's a vowel, there's no consonant before it, nothing we can do, that'll be by itself. But is a vowel, the from I'm is a consonant, and we always want to link consonant with vowel. So consonant vowel, consonant vowel. So I'm a. Then let's look at the next word, big. Now big, the G on the end, it's on the end of the syllable. If we say the word by itself, big, you can't really hear the G. It's not bigger, just big. But the next word, ugly, starts with a vowel sound. So we want to connect that G with the U. So now it's a new syllable. Instead of G being at the end of the syllable big, the G is at the beginning of the syllable ga. So it becomes I'm a big ugly elephant. So I'm a big ugly. We run it together. And the sounds of some of those consonant sounds are actually going to change. The G changes its sound because instead of being at the end of the syllable, it's now at the beginning of a syllable. So how would a non-native speaker say it? I'm a big ugly elephant. How would a native speaker say it? I'm a big ugly elephant. Notice the G in big is stronger, big ugly. So that position in the syllable, because we're splitting our syllables differently, we're changing the sound. So saying I'm a big ugly elephant is much easier. So when you're learning to pronounce things this way, one good way is to just break it down into parts and don't think of it as individual words. Think of it just as sounds. Think of it as another language. So like maybe I'm a, it's not a word in English, but just think about the sound of that and learn it as if it's a word by itself, I'm a. And then big ugly. Big ugly, make it like it's another word. So I'm a big ugly. And then elephant is fine by itself. So then we put it together, I'm a big ugly elephant, I'm a big ugly elephant. See how quickly I could say that? And that's because we're dividing the syllables in a way that makes it easier for us to pronounce. And it does change the sound of some words. So when you hear a native speaker and a non-native speaker, and you can hear some things are different, even if the non-native speaker is really good, often that's the kind of difference. So that's the first thing. So video 1, pretty much finished now. And that is just about that, about word linking, about us dividing the syllables in a different way so that we actually start connecting the sounds together. That is the beginning. There is so much more to learn. There are so many more things that native English speakers do that English learners don't. So be sure to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any of the upcoming videos. Or you can just wait for them to be uploaded and binge watch. It's up to you. But really, hang around, it's going to be worthwhile because there are so many things that you will learn about how to make your speaking so much more natural and more like a native speaker, regardless of the kind of accent that you want to learn, the form of English. These things are true for British English. These things are true for American English, for Australian English. It will always apply. So thanks for watching this one, and I'm sure it's going to be valuable to you the more you practice, and I'll see you in the next video.